News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. And there's your closing bell for this Wednesday on Wall Street, where traders fully priced in a quarter-point Fed rate cut in September. And, of course, that pushed stocks higher. And bonds rallied, too. We bring you the closing numbers each day here at Bloomberg. Looks like we do have a couple of new records to tell you about. The S&P 500 gained 21 points, landing at 6466. Nasdaq gained 31 points, landing at 21,713. Both of those new records. And the Dow gained 464 points, not quite a new record yet for the Dow. The 10-year Treasury yield at 4.24%, the 2-year yield at 3.67%. And traders have fully priced in a quarter-point Fed rate cut in September. Bloomberg's Michael McKee reports there is a long way to go until then.
Services inflation is rising, and they've got to worry about that as well as goods inflation. Of the 75 goods items ranked in the CPI report, 65% of them actually did rise in price. That is the highest in 30 years.
Bloomberg's Mike McKee. Crypto firm Bullish raised $1.1 billion in an initial public offering, pricing its shares above the marketed range. That company sold 30 million shares for $37 each. That's where they opened. Bullish ended the day at $68 per share. Apple plans a comeback in artificial intelligence with new devices, including robots, a smart speaker with a display, and home security cameras. Bloomberg's Mark Gurman says this comeback will not supplant the iPhone as Apple's topic product yet.
Instead of being built around the phone and the cloud, it's going to be built around AI. So all the devices, right, including the phone, are going to get demoted a bit, and AI is going to become the center of the universe.
Hear more from Mark Gurman on the Bloomberg Business Week Daily podcast. Now, this push is expected to include a tabletop robot targeted for 2027 as the centerpiece of the AI strategy. It'll feature a lifelike version of Siri that can inject itself into conversations. President Trump warned he would impose very severe consequences if Russia's President Vladimir Putin doesn't agree to a ceasefire deal later this week. The president says today's virtual meeting with Ukraine's president and European leaders went well.
We had a very good call. He was on the call. President Zelensky was on the call. I would rate it a 10, very, very friendly.
President Trump is set to discuss the war in Ukraine with Putin at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage on Friday. That base played a key strategic role in monitoring and deterring the Soviet Union during much of the Cold War. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the president is pressuring Putin with sanction threats to try to bring that war to an end, and he says Europe should do the same.
President Trump is meeting with President Putin, and the Europeans are in the wings carping about how he should do it, what he should do it, but the Europeans need to join us in these sanctions.
The Treasury Secretary says interest rates are too constrictive and should likely be 150 to 175 basis points lower. In a one-on-one conversation with Bloomberg Surveillance, Bessent says the recent revisions to the employment data show Fed Chair Jay Powell has lived up to President Trump's nickname of too late.
If we'd seen those numbers in May, in June, I suspect we could have had rate cuts in June and July. So that tells me that there's a very good chance of a 50 basis point rate cut.
And former Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers reacted to Secretary Bessent's call to lower the Fed rate at least 150 basis points.
I was surprised to see the Secretary, any Secretary of the Treasury, be that prescriptive, and I'm not sure it's helpful for the administration to be publicly prescribing on monetary policy.
Former Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers speaking with Bloomberg's David Weston on Bloomberg's Wall Street Week, which you can watch Fridays at 6 p.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg Television. And former St. Louis Fed President James Bullard agrees the Fed will likely lower rates at their meeting in September and that it should be less than 50 basis points.
I've said 100 basis points over the next, as we go into 2026, so I think we could get started on that path. I think 50 sounds panicky.
Bullard's name was also said to be on the short list for Fed chair to succeed Chair Jay Powell. But Bullard says it is very early in the process.
This is all under construction, so we'll see how they want to design it. And I would say this is a credible list of candidates. I know almost all these people. I think this is a very sharp group. Many of these people would do a fantastic job.
You can hear that entire interview with former St. Louis Fed President James Bullard on the Bloomberg Talks podcast. Now, Secretary Bessent says he is casting a wide net in his search for a new Fed chair.
We had a series or a list of current Fed members. We're going to have some private sector, very well respected,
like who?
Very well respected people.
And you can hear Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's full interview on the Bloomberg Talks podcast. President Trump later said he is down to 3 or 4 potential candidates now, and that he may name the next Fed chair, quote, a little bit early. That's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg.